I never really understood how a person could be broke and surrounded by wealth at the same time, but that was my life. I worked whatever jobs I could find, delivery runs that ended in stolen packages, night shifts at places that smelled like burnt oil and regret, and one unforgettable week as a customer experience tester, where I was mostly just yelled at for existing in the wrong aisle. Still, I kept going. That's just how things were. What I didn't know was that somewhere out there, on a quiet stretch of off-world luxury housing, my grandfather was supposedly sending me $7,000 every single month. I found out during what was meant to be a normal family barbecue. The sun was too bright, the food was slightly burnt, and everyone was pretending to enjoy each other's company. I was halfway through dodging questions about my job situation when he showed up, calm, expensive suit, like he had stepped out of a completely different reality. He looked around the yard like he was reviewing an investment he hadn't checked in a while, then casually asked, "So how have you been spending the $7,000 each month?" The silence that followed wasn't normal silence. It was the kind that feels like the world forgot how to breathe. I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. I had never seen a cent from him. Not once. Meanwhile, I was calculating whether I could afford cheaper toothpaste. But he wasn't laughing. That's when everything shifted. His expression didn't change much, but the air did. Like a system had just crashed somewhere important. He repeated it slowly, as if we were all missing something obvious. 7,000. Monthly. For years. My eyes moved before my brain did, straight to my sister. She was suddenly very interested in the ground. Too interested. The kind of interest that screams guilt without saying a word. Her fork stopped mid-air. Then she smiled, wrong timing, wrong shape, wrong everything. Across the fence, my alien neighbor, who had been invited mostly out of curiosity, and who always looked slightly amused by human chaos, tilted her head. Her species could apparently detect stress hormones through scent, and I swear her antennae twitched like she had just walked into a fireworks factory. Something was off. Very off. Then my sister stood up too quickly, knocking her drink over, laughing too loudly, insisting it must be a banking error, a cosmic mistake, a misunderstanding of interstellar mail systems, anything except what her face was clearly saying. And right there on the picnic table, completely forgotten in the panic, was her tablet. Still open. Still glowing. Still showing rows and rows of numbers that didn't look like mistakes. Just endless lines of received, cached, and adjusted, stretching back farther than I could think clearly about. And for the first time in my life, I realized this barbecue wasn't going to end with dessert. Someone eventually reached for her tablet. I don't even remember who moved first. Maybe it was my cousin, maybe it was the neighbor's alien curiosity kicking in, or maybe it was just the universe deciding enough suspense had been wasted. But the moment the screen lit up fully, the entire yard shifted. It wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a confession in spreadsheet form. Rows. Columns. Dates stretching back so far they felt like a different lifetime. Every single month, without fail, there it was, a $7,000 deposit. And next to it, cashed. At first, there was silence again, but this time it wasn't confused. It was the silence of people slowly realizing they were sitting next to a financial crime so organized it looked almost artistic. Then someone started reading aloud. Emergency funds, vacation trip to reduce stress from family pressure. Another pause. Borrowed for emotional healing, return pending. A louder pause. Definitely not gambling. That one broke the group. Not because it was funny at first, but because the next 40 entries were all some version of the same phrase. My sister stood frozen, her smile trying to hold itself together like a badly repaired wall. She kept insisting it wasn't what it looked like, that it was all planned, structured, even responsible. She called it temporary resource allocation. Nobody bought it. The alien neighbor leaned closer to me and whispered that humans were either extremely chaotic or extremely creative with theft accounting. I didn't correct her. Then we found the section labeled repayment plan. That's when things got worse. It wasn't just a joke. It was detailed, mathematical, optimistic in a way that felt almost delusional. It calculated interest, projected earnings, even included hypothetical future lottery wins as part of repayment strategy. My grandfather started laughing at that point. Not a polite laugh either, full, shaking laughter like he had been waiting years for this exact moment. That made it even worse. My sister tried to grab the tablet, but someone had already scrolled further. There were notes. Personal ones. Little comments like, "We'll fix next month for sure," and, "This is the last time I borrow emotionally." The final line on the sheet made everything go quiet again. Total owed, $1,942,000. She slowly sat back down like her bones had given up. And for the first time, I stopped feeling confused about my life and started feeling something much more dangerous: clarity. I expected my grandfather to explode. Or maybe calmly disown someone. That felt like the normal direction for a situation where nearly $2 million had been casually mismanaged through emotional budgeting and questionable life choices. Instead, he just kept laughing. Not the angry kind. Not even the disappointed kind. The kind of laughter that comes from someone who has seen too many strange galaxies, too many failed empires, and apparently, one extremely dedicated spreadsheet criminal sitting at my family barbecue. When he finally stopped, he wiped his eyes and looked around the table like we were all part of a show he had already paid for. "I suspected something like this," he said. That made the entire family freeze again. My sister blinked. "You what?" He nodded like it was obvious. "Checks don't disappear for 20 years without behavior patterns. I just wanted to see what you'd do when no one was watching properly." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a family dinner. It was some kind of experiment. Then he turned toward me, and his expression actually softened. "You," he said, pointing slightly. "You kept working. You didn't have the money. You didn't rely on it. That's rare." I didn't know whether that was a compliment or a late cosmic apology, but it hit harder than I expected. Then he leaned back and dropped the real twist. A challenge. 1 year. My sister and I both had to prove what we could build from this mess. She had to repay as much as possible. I had full access to what was coming next from him, but only if I built something real, something that mattered beyond inheritance and accidents. No more hidden safety nets. No more maybe someday money. Just results. My sister immediately protested, of course. Said something about emotional trauma and unfair financial pressure, but Grandpa just waved it off like she was negotiating with gravity. That's when everything started spiraling in a completely different direction. I didn't know what I was doing at first. I just knew I couldn't keep living like I had been, jumping from job to job, pretending survival was the same as progress. So I started building something practical. Small interstellar logistics work. Basic transport routes between colonies. Nothing glamorous, just useful. That's where I met her. The alien neighbor who had been watching all of this unfold like it was her favorite kind of human documentary suddenly stopped being just an observer. She had engineering knowledge, business instincts sharper than anyone I'd ever met, and a strange habit of correcting my math without warning during conversations. She didn't flirt like humans did. It was more like strategic collaboration that slowly became personal before either of us admitted it. Meanwhile, my sister went in the opposite direction entirely. She launched things that made no sense at all. Emotional support asteroid farms. Luxury pet grooming for genetically modified space lizards. Vibe-based financial consulting. And somehow, people started buying into it. It was infuriating. And hilarious. Late nights blurred into strategy sessions with the alien, arguing over trade routes and profit margins while accidentally sitting closer and closer without noticing. Every success felt like it came with her voice in the background, quietly saying, "You were right about that decision." Like it mattered more than it should. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something. And I had no idea that my sister, of all people, was about to accidentally turn her chaos into the one thing that could change everything again. A year has a way of changing people, especially when the ground beneath them is constantly shifting between success, humiliation, and accidental genius. When we all met again at the same family barbecue spot, it didn't feel like the same place. Or maybe it was just us. The air was calmer, but somehow heavier, like the universe was waiting to see which version of us would show up this time. My sister arrived first. That alone was suspicious. She wasn't panicking anymore. No fake smiles. No frantic excuses. Just a quiet confidence I had never seen on her before. Then my grandfather showed up like he always did, perfect timing, perfectly dressed, like he had already read the ending of the story and was just here to confirm it. And then there was me. I wasn't broke anymore. My small logistics company had expanded into something far beyond what I imagined. Turns out people really do need efficient transport between colonies when everything is spread across light years and poor planning. And yes, the alien engineer standing beside me had a lot to do with that success. She didn't say much, but the way she stood near me made it very clear we were no longer just business partners, in any normal human sense. Grandfather didn't waste time. He asked for results. My sister went first. She sighed, pulled up her account records, and admitted something none of us expected. Somehow, through a combination of ridiculous business ventures, viral attention, and what she called strategic nonsense marketing, she had actually paid back every single dollar she had taken. Not only that, she had turned one of her worst ideas into a multi-sector industry joke that somehow became profitable. Nobody knew whether to clap or question reality. Then it was my turn. My company report showed growth beyond what anyone at the table expected. Stable routes, interstellar contracts, real infrastructure. Not luck. Not inheritance. Just systems built from scratch, failure after failure, corrected until they worked. My grandfather nodded slowly, like he had been waiting for exactly this balance. Then he did something none of us predicted. He said both of us had passed. My sister actually dropped her drink. Apparently, the challenge was never about money. It was about direction, responsibility, chaos versus control, and whether a family could survive both without collapsing under its own expectations. That should have been the emotional part. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Because the alien engineer, who had been quietly observing everything with that unreadable expression of hers, suddenly stepped forward and did something extremely unhuman. She confessed. Not dramatically. Not awkwardly. Just simply stated that in her culture, partnership was not separate from emotion, and that somewhere between arguing over fuel efficiency and saving me from 3 catastrophic business decisions, she had already made her choice. My brain stopped for a second. My sister immediately whispered, "Oh, this is getting worse." Grandfather, completely unhelpful as always, looked delighted. And just when I thought the chaos had peaked, he raised his glass and said the worst possible thing a man in his position could say. "Good. Now we can talk about inheritance." At that exact moment, I realized the real problem was never the missing money. It was that in this family, even love came with spreadsheets.